Hi, I'm John Green. Welcome to my salon, or should I say, saloon. This is Mental Floss Video, and did you know that there were camels in the Wild West? Around the 1850s, the US Army actually imported about 70 of them from the Middle East to the Southwest. They were often used to carry heavy loads from place to place, but in the end, they all either escaped or were sold. I hope we get to see some camels in Season 2 of Westworld. Anyway, that's the first of many facts about the Wild West I'm going to share with you today. The Bowie knife was named after a Wild West figure, Jim Bowie. In 1827, he used one to win a fight after having been shot and stabbed repeatedly. The knife was actually created by Jim's brother, Resin Bowie, and the design became very popular in the Wild West due to its efficiency. The robber Elmer McCurdy ended up becoming a legend after his corpse was embalmed. For around 60 years, he was used as a haunted house prop, carnival attraction, and wax museum artifact. Eventually, it was forgotten that he had once been an actual person, until 1976, that is, when his body was found on the $6 Million Man set when a limb broke off and it was clear that the prop was, you know, a corpse. In 1892, a man named Ben Sublett died, and with his death, we supposedly lost the location of a secret gold mine in the Guadalupe Mountains of West Texas. Sublett claimed to have found a canyon containing tons of gold nuggets, and allegedly he'd even brought friends there, but after he died, it was never found again. The Pony Express is a pretty famous staple of Wild West stories, but it never actually made any money, and it was only around for a year and a half between 1860 and 1861. It's believed that the company actually lost around $200,000 in total. In addition to the Pony Express, when you think about the Wild West, you probably think about cowboys, but it turns out they existed for a pretty boring reason. In the northern US, beef prices were really high. There were tons of cattle in Texas, so it was cowboys who were tasked with moving them north. Honestly, we've mythologized the cowboy a lot in American history, but they were basically just sheepdogs. But to be fair, the trip north was long, slow, and dangerous. Cowboys and their herds went about 15 miles a day because they didn't want to risk the cattle losing excessive amounts of weight on the trip. And there were even traffic jams, particularly on the Santa Fe Trail in the 1860s. Thousands of cattle and their accompanying cowboys and wagons were trying to utilize the trail at the same time. Some cowboys had cursing contests, by the way. They would kind of gather together and throw insults at each other, though they didn't use the same curse words that we have today. Theirs were more religion-inspired. And you may not know this, especially if you get all your Wild West knowledge from the movies, but about a quarter of cowboys were black men. Additionally, many black men worked as cooks on the long journeys north. Let's move on to some famous people of the Wild West. Of course, there's Annie Oakley, known for her impressive shooting skills. In fact, she had those abilities when she was just a teenager. She hunted and sold enough animals to a local store that she was able to pay off her mom's $200 mortgage. I want a $200 mortgage. Where do you get a $200 mortgage? Anyway, Annie Oakley also once performed for Sitting Bull, who was famous for defeating George Custer and his force in 1876. After watching Oakley shoot, Sitting Bull wanted to take a picture with her so badly that he was willing to pay $65. Sitting Bull joined Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in 1885, by the way. He was pretty famous himself and got around $2 per autograph. And speaking of Buffalo Bill, he allegedly got his nickname in an 8-hour buffalo shooting contest. Many believe the contest happened because there were two Buffalo Bills and they were vying for the title of, you know, the better buffalo killer. That said, like a lot of Wild West stories, we're not sure that one's actually true, and Buffalo Bill was known for his tendency to exaggerate. Billy the Kid had an interesting job early in his life. Some say that he worked at a cheese factory owned by one of his future partners in crime. Another famous outlaw, Butch Cassidy, had an interesting first foray into crime. He stole a pair of jeans in 1880 and left behind an IOU. By the way, why does everyone in the Wild West have such an awesome name? Butch Cassidy, Elmer McCurdy, Resin Bowie. I wish some of these outlaw parents had called my parents before they named me John Green. Right, but back to the Wild West. So, like Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse was another Native American warrior famous for fighting against General Custer. A memorial is being built to Crazy Horse in South Dakota. When it's finished, it's supposed to be the largest sculpture in the world. The problem is, it was started in 1948 and still hasn't been completed. But speaking of great names, we don't know how Calamity Jane got her name. One legend is that she was dubbed that when she was 8 years old after both of her parents died. but there's no way to know for sure. And on the topic of legends that we don't have evidence of, aka the theme of this episode, it's probably a misconception that Jesse and Frank James were Robin Hood types. Some argue they stole money from the rich and gave it to the poor, but they took around $200,000 in total, and there's no proof that they gave it to anyone besides themselves. Jesse James, by the way, had his remains exhumed in 1995. It's said that he died in 1882, but some people believed his death was faked and that wasn't really him in his grave, so scientists did some DNA tests on the body buried in Missouri, and it was the real Jesse James. Probably. One Wild West figure you may not have heard of is Judge Roy Bean. What a great name! He ran a saloon in Texas in addition to being a justice of the peace, and he became somewhat famous for how he acted on that second title, Justice of the Peace. For instance, he once discovered that a corpse had a concealed weapon on him, so he charged the dead man with a $40 fine. And if that dead man was Elmer McCurdy, he could probably pay for it with that $6 million man money. In April of 1896, there were two fires in the mining town of Cripple Creek, Colorado, just 4 days apart. The first one was caused by a stove in a dance hall, and it ruined 8 blocks of the town. The second one destroyed much of what was left, leaving over a third of the town homeless, but Cripple Creek did get rebuilt, and you can still visit it today. A similar thing happened to the Gem Theater in Deadwood, South Dakota. There was a fire in the summer of 1879, and it got repaired only to catch fire again in September of that year. It did stay open after that for a few years, but then there was another fire in 1899, and it closed for good. While we're on the subject of famous towns in the Wild West, Tombstone, Arizona has an interesting name origin story. The legend goes that its founder, Ed Scheffelin, went out looking for silver and other valuable rocks in the area, and his peers would always stay behind, telling him, "The only stone you'll find out there will be your tombstone." But eventually he discovered a silver mine and named it Tombstone. By the way, the Tombstone Epitaph newspaper has been running since 1880. It now puts out monthly issues that focus on stories from the Wild West. Good to see some cold, hard journalism still being done. And finally, I returned to my salon to tell you that while we view the Wild West as an extremely violent, lawless place, there were actually many types of private agencies making rules and demanding that people follow them. According to the economic historian Thomas J. DiLorenzo, these weren't governments because, quote, they did not have a legal monopoly on keeping order. Instead, they included such organizations as land clubs, cattlemen's associations, mining camps, and wagon trains. So there weren't governments per se, but a good wagon train can keep you in order. Thanks for watching Mental Floss video, which is made with the help of all of these lovely people. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to check out our other video on Wild West misconceptions. And as we say in my hometown, don't forget to be awesome.